For years, Officers Rickman and Hardy acted like Cypress Bayou belonged to them. Every so-called trespasser was just another black resident to harass, every challenge stamped out by intimidation and force. But when they arrested a quiet black man on his own porch, they believed he was powerless. Just another target, just another warning. They didn't care to ask who he really was. They never imagined they'd picked a fight with the director of the FBI. Now, as threats escalate and the town watches, they're about to learn what real justice feels like. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. The morning sun cast long shadows across Cypress Bayou's tired streets as Dr. Malcolm Everett's black sedan came to a stop. The gravel crunched softly under his polished shoes as he stepped out, his brown trench coat catching the early breeze. The familiar scent of magnolia and damp earth filled his lungs. Some things never changed. His childhood home stood before him, its white paint peeling in places, the porch steps wearing the scars of countless footsteps. Malcolm's hand tightened around his keys as he noticed curtains twitching in nearby windows. Faces appeared and disappeared like ghosts, watching the stranger who wasn't really a stranger at all. 25 years, he whispered to himself, climbing the creaking steps. The key slid into the lock with a stubborn resistance, as if the house itself needed convincing. The door groaned open, releasing a wave of stale air and memories. Inside, dust motes danced in the shafts of morning light. Malcolm's footsteps echoed through empty rooms that seemed smaller than he remembered. The wallpaper, his mother's choice, had faded to gentle pastels. On the living room wall, family photos hung in their original places, his father's proud smile frozen in time, his mother's gentle eyes watching over the empty house. Malcolm picked up a framed photograph from the mantel, wiping away years of dust with his thumb. It showed a younger version of himself, standing between his parents at his high school graduation. "I made it, Mama," he said softly, "just like you always said I would." A gentle knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Through the screen, he saw Mrs. Edna Willis, her silver hair catching the morning light. Her face broke into a warm smile, though her eyes held a hint of caution. "Lord have mercy, if it isn't little Malcolm Everett," she said, her voice carrying the weight of years. "Though I suppose I can't call you little anymore, can I?" Malcolm opened the screen door, greeting her with a respectful nod. "Mrs. Willis, you haven't aged a day." She waved off the compliment, but couldn't hide her pleasure. "Don't you try that sweet talk with me, boy. I've known you since you were knee-high to a grasshopper." Her expression turned serious. "But what brings you back here? After all this time?" Malcolm gestured to the porch swing, and they sat together, the old chains creaking rhythmically. "It was time," he said simply. "The house needed attention. And maybe the neighborhood does too." Mrs. Willis's face darkened. "Things aren't what they used to be, Malcolm. These new police they brought in, they're not like Officer Jones used to be. They don't know us, don't want to know us." She leaned closer, lowering her voice. "The Jackson family? 3 doors down? Gone last month. Bank claimed they missed payments, but Mariah Jackson never missed a payment in her life. And the Browns before them. And the Washingtons." Malcolm listened intently, his investigator's mind already cataloging details. "How long has this been happening?" "About 2 years now. Ever since that new development company started buying up land." Mrs. Willis straightened her dress. "People are scared, Malcolm. Those who speak up, well, they tend to find themselves in trouble with these new officers." "I see." Malcolm's voice remained calm, but his jaw tightened slightly. "Thank you for telling me, Mrs. Willis. I might have some questions later, if you don't mind." "You always were a curious one," she said, standing slowly. "Just be careful, Malcolm. This isn't the same town you left." She patted his shoulder before making her way down the steps, her cane tapping a steady rhythm. Malcolm spent the next hour unpacking essentials, clothes, toiletries, and a few personal items. He found his father's old coffee maker in the kitchen, cleaned it thoroughly, and soon the aroma of fresh coffee filled the house, pushing back the mustiness. Taking his steaming mug outside, Malcolm settled into one of the old wooden chairs on the porch. The sun was fully up now, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. He sipped his coffee, watching as early morning joggers passed by, their steps quickening when they noticed him. The quiet morning air was broken by the low rumble of engines. 2 police cruisers appeared at the end of the street, moving slowly, deliberately. Their white paint gleamed in the morning sun, the parish emblems on their doors clearly visible. Malcolm could see the officers inside, their faces hard and suspicious as they crawled past his house. He raised his coffee mug slightly, a gesture that could have been a greeting or a challenge. The officers didn't respond, their eyes fixed on him as they rolled by, their speed just slow enough to make their presence felt. Malcolm took another sip of his coffee, his expression unchanged. The liquid had cooled slightly, but he didn't mind. He had all the time in the world to watch, to observe, to understand. The cruisers disappeared around the corner, but their message lingered in the morning air. The late morning sun beat down as Malcolm stood on his porch, carefully wiping decades of grime from an old brass house number. His father had mounted it proudly when they'd first moved in, and Malcolm was determined to restore its shine. The brown trench coat felt warm in the growing heat, but he kept it on, methodically polishing the metal with slow, deliberate strokes. A police cruiser's engine growled to a stop in front of his house. Malcolm's hand stilled, but he didn't turn around. Heavy car doors slammed, followed by the crunch of boots on gravel. He could feel their presence before they spoke, the tension crackling in the air like static before a storm. "Hey, you! What do you think you're doing?" The voice was sharp, aggressive. Malcolm turned slowly to face 2 officers, both white, both young, their hands already resting on their belts. The one who'd spoken had a crew cut and a face twisted into a permanent sneer. His nameplate read, "Rickman." "Good morning, officers," Malcolm said calmly, carefully setting down his cleaning supplies. "Is there something I can help you with?" Officer Rickman took an aggressive step forward. "We've had reports of suspicious activity. This is private property. You want to explain what you're doing here?" "I'm cleaning my house number," Malcolm replied evenly, gesturing to the brass numerals. "This is my property." The second officer, Hardy, let out a derisive laugh. "Your property? Right. Let's see some ID." Malcolm noticed movement in the windows across the street, faces appearing, phones being raised. He reached slowly into his coat pocket, maintaining eye contact. "Of course. Though I should mention, hands where we can see them," Rickman barked, his hand moving to his weapon. "Both hands up, now." Malcolm raised his hands carefully, his expression remaining composed despite the growing knot of anger in his chest. "My identification is in my inner coat pocket. I'm reaching for it very slowly." "Just hurry up," Hardy snapped, moving to flank him. With deliberate movements, Malcolm retrieved his wallet and held it out. Rickman snatched it, flipping it open with obvious disdain. His eyes narrowed as he read the ID. "This says you're Malcolm Everett. You expect us to believe this is your house?" "It is my house. I inherited it from my parents. The deed is inside if you'd like to." "Shut up!" Rickman cut him off, tossing the wallet to Hardy. "This ID could be fake. Turn around and put your hands behind your back." Malcolm stood his ground, his voice firm but quiet. "Officers, I understand you're doing your job, but this is my property. I have every right to—" Rickman moved with sudden violence, grabbing Malcolm's arm and slamming him face first against the wall. Pain shot through Malcolm's cheek as the rough siding scraped his skin. He could hear gasps from the growing crowd of neighbors. "Stop resisting!" Rickman shouted, though Malcolm hadn't moved. Cold metal bit into his wrists as the handcuffs clicked shut, ratcheted unnecessarily tight. "I am not resisting," Malcolm said through gritted teeth as Rickman wrenched his arm up painfully. "This is an illegal arrest, and you're using excessive force." "Oh, look who knows the law," Hardy mocked, roughly patting Malcolm down. "You can explain that downtown." Across the street, Mrs. Willis emerged from her house, her voice cutting through the tension. "You leave him alone. That's Dr. Everett. This is his house." "Ma'am, stay back or you'll be next," Rickman warned, shoving Malcolm toward the stairs. Malcolm stumbled but kept his balance, maintaining his dignity despite the humiliation burning in his chest. More neighbors were gathering now, phones recording the scene. Someone called out, "This ain't right!" Another voice shouted, "We're watching you, officers!" "Everyone back in your houses!" Hardy commanded, his hand on his weapon. "This is police business!" Malcolm was marched to the patrol car, Rickman's grip bruisingly tight on his arm. The officer pushed his head down roughly as he forced him into the back seat. The door slammed with a final thud. Through the window, Malcolm could see Mrs. Willis standing on her porch, phone raised high, her face a mask of righteous anger. Other neighbors clustered in small groups, some filming, others shouting protests. A young mother pulled her children back inside, her face tight with familiar fear. "You're making a serious mistake," Malcolm said quietly from the back seat. "Shut your mouth," Rickman snapped, starting the engine. "You can talk all you want at the station." The patrol car pulled away from the curb, leaving behind a crowd of angry voices. Mrs. Willis's shout carried above the rest. "We're calling everybody. You hear me? Everybody." "Threaten all you want, old woman," Hardy called back through his open window. "Next person who interferes gets arrested for obstruction." The car accelerated down the street, carrying Malcolm away from his childhood home for the second time in his life, but this time in handcuffs. Officer Rickman's grip remained painfully tight as he marched Malcolm through the double doors of the Cypress Bayou Police Department. The fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across the worn linoleum floors, highlighting the scuffs and dirt now marking Malcolm's brown trench coat. The morning shift officers looked up from their desks, some smirking, others averting their eyes. "Look what we caught trespassing on Oak Street," Rickman announced proudly, giving Malcolm an unnecessary shove toward the booking desk. "City slicker here thought he could just walk right onto someone's property." Malcolm kept his posture straight, despite the uncomfortable bite of the handcuffs. "I'd like to contact my lawyer now," he stated calmly, his voice carrying across the suddenly quiet room. Hardy let out an exaggerated laugh. "Oh, you hear that? Lawyer talk already." He leaned in close to Malcolm's ear. "Listen here, friend. City slickers like you always get put in their place in Cypress Bayou. Might want to remember that." The booking sergeant, a heavy-set man with yellowed teeth, took his time shuffling papers. "Name?" he drawled, though Malcolm's ID sat right in front of him. "Dr. Malcolm Everett," Malcolm replied evenly. "And I'm formally requesting my phone call." "Awful demanding for someone caught breaking and entering," Rickman said, yanking Malcolm's cuffs tighter. "Maybe a few hours in holding will teach you some manners." Malcolm didn't flinch. "The law requires you to allow me to make a phone call. I'm also noting that you've yet to read me my rights, or properly document the reason for my arrest." The booking sergeant's face darkened. "You some kind of lawyer?" "No," Malcolm replied. "Just a citizen who knows his rights. Now, about that phone call." Hardy grabbed a clipboard and started writing. Suspect showed aggressive behavior during arrest, resisted officers' commands, demonstrated hostile attitude toward law enforcement. "That's not what happened," Malcolm stated firmly. "And there are multiple witnesses with video evidence to prove it." "Your word against ours," Rickman sneered. "Who do you think people believe around here?" A heavy door slammed, and the room's atmosphere shifted. Chief Ray Dalton strode in, his considerable bulk wrapped in a poorly fitted uniform. His face was flushed red, whether from the heat or anger wasn't clear. "What's all this about?" Dalton demanded, eyes narrowing at Malcolm. "Caught this one trespassing on Oak Street, Chief," Rickman reported eagerly, getting real mouthy about his rights. Dalton circled Malcolm slowly, like a predator sizing up prey. "Oak Street, huh? Nice neighborhood. Too nice for some folks, if you catch my meaning." Malcolm met his gaze steadily. "Chief Dalton, I presume. I'm still waiting for my phone call. Also, I noticed Officer Rickman's body cam appears to be turned off, which violates Department Policy Section 8.4, Paragraph 3. The chief's face twitched. "You seem awful familiar with police procedure." "I make it my business to know the law," Malcolm replied. He glanced at the booking sheet. "I also notice they've listed the wrong address on that form. The property in question is 1242 Oak Street, not 1224. A small detail, but important for the record." Dalton snatched the form, scowling. "Get him his damn phone call. Then we'll see about teaching him some respect for local authority." They led Malcolm to a grimy phone mounted on the wall. He dialed from memory, his fingers steady despite the cuffs. The conversation was brief. "This is Malcolm Everett. I'm at the Cypress Bayou Police Department." "Yes." "Thank you." He hung up and turned back to his captors. "Shall we proceed with booking?" "Think you're real smart, don't you?" Dalton growled. "We'll see how smart you feel after a night in holding." Malcolm allowed himself to be led to a small cell. The metal bench was cold and uncomfortable, but he sat with perfect posture, his expression unchanged. He could hear Rickman and Hardy laughing with the other officers, their voices carrying down the corridor. "City boy's gonna learn. Should have stayed where he came from. Chief'll straighten him out good." Minutes ticked by. Malcolm used the time to mentally record every detail: badge numbers, timestamps, procedural violations. The chief's voice boomed through the station, making plans for what sounded like a press conference about maintaining order in our community. Then a phone rang. The station fell silent except for the chief's voice, now suddenly uncertain. "Yes, sir. I understand, sir. But we had no way of—" "Yes, sir. Right away, sir." Malcolm watched through the cell bars as Chief Dalton's face drained of color. The man's hands were shaking as he lowered the phone, his eyes darting to the holding cell with something new in them: fear. The chief stood frozen, sweat beading on his forehead, staring at Malcolm as if seeing him for the first time. The power dynamic had shifted so dramatically that even the other officers could feel it, their earlier bravado evaporating into confused silence. Within the hour, the station buzzed with nervous energy. Chief Dalton's meaty hand trembled as he unlocked Malcolm's cell, his earlier swagger replaced by a sickly pallor. "My office. Now," he muttered, unable to meet Malcolm's steady gaze. Malcolm straightened his brown trench coat as he followed Dalton down the corridor. Officers who had been laughing earlier now pressed themselves against the walls, their faces masks of uncertainty. Through the glass walls of Dalton's office, they could see multiple phones ringing simultaneously. The chief's office was a shrine to his own authority. Walls covered with awards, commendations, and photos of him shaking hands with politicians. Now he slumped behind his desk, dabbing his forehead with a handkerchief as he juggled calls on speakerphone. "Yes, Director Matthews, I understand the severity." Dalton's voice cracked. "We had no idea that Dr. Everett was—" A sharp voice cut through the speaker. "That's FBI Director Everett to you, Chief Dalton. Do you have any idea the magnitude of your department's actions today?" Malcolm sat quietly, hands folded in his lap, watching Dalton squirm. On another line, the state attorney general's voice boomed through the room. "Chief, you better pray those officers had their body cams on. We're sending a team to collect all footage and documentation immediately." "Sir," Dalton stammered, "there might have been some technical difficulties with the cameras." "Technical difficulties?" The Attorney General's tone could have frozen hell. "Like the technical difficulties in the Johnson case? And the Williams case? We'll be reviewing those too, Chief." Officer Rickman burst into the office, his face red. "Chief, the media's outside. They're saying—" His voice died as he saw Malcolm sitting calmly in the chair. "Officer Rickman," Malcolm spoke for the first time, his voice quiet but carrying an unmistakable weight. "I believe you have some paperwork to complete regarding this morning's incident. I'd be particularly interested in your explanation for the excessive force used during my arrest." Rickman backed away, nearly tripping over his own feet. Through the windows, camera flashes were already starting to light up the parking lot. "Effective immediately," the FBI director's voice commanded through the speaker. "Officers Rickman and Hardy are suspended, pending a full federal investigation. Chief Dalton, your department will provide complete cooperation. Director Everett has our full support in this matter." Malcolm stood, adjusting his cuffs. "I'll need my personal effects returned, Chief. And I believe a state trooper is waiting to drive me home." Dalton's face was a study in conflicting emotions, fear, anger, and the desperate calculation of a man seeing his power crumble. "Director Everett," he managed, "perhaps we could discuss this privately?" "All discussions will be properly documented through official channels," Malcolm replied. "I'm sure you understand the importance of following procedure." The walk through the station was like a reverse parade of his earlier march. Officers who had smirked now stared at their shoes. The booking sergeant frantically shuffled papers, trying to hide the falsified arrest report. Outside, the morning sun had grown stronger. State Trooper Williams, a young black officer, stood at attention beside his cruiser. "Director Everett, sir. I'm here to escort you home." As they drove down Oak Street, Malcolm could see his neighbors gathering. Mrs. Willis stood on her porch, phone in hand, spreading the news. "That's right, baby. FBI director. They picked the wrong one this time." The cruiser pulled up to Malcolm's house, where the trespassing drama had unfolded just hours before. Children peeked out from behind their parents. Mr. Johnson, who had filmed the arrest, rushed forward with his phone. "Sir, I got it all on video, every second." "Thank you," Malcolm said, addressing the growing crowd. "That kind of documentation matters. It's time for things to change in Cypress Bayou." Throughout the afternoon, neighbors stopped by. Some brought food, others shared stories of their own run-ins with Dalton's department. Hope filled their voices. Hope that maybe, finally, someone would listen. As evening settled, Malcolm sat on his porch, the same spot where he'd been arrested that morning. The street was quiet except for the chirp of crickets and distant laughter from children playing. His coffee had grown cold, but he didn't mind. A pickup truck crawled past, its engine growling low. The headlights swept across the porch, lingering longer than necessary. Malcolm took another sip of his coffee. His posture relaxed, but his eyes alert as he watched the truck disappear around the corner. Mrs. Willis called from next door. "You need anything, Director Everett?" "I'm fine, Mrs. Willis," he replied, his voice carrying in the evening air. "Just enjoying being home." The porch light cast a warm glow, and Malcolm could see other neighbors sitting out too, keeping watch, sharing this moment of possibility. The tide wasn't just turning, it had already shifted, and everyone could feel it. The grandfather clock in Malcolm's hallway struck midnight, its deep chimes echoing through the quiet house. Sleep eluded him, his mind still processing the day's events. He walked the familiar rooms, running his fingers along the walls his father had painted decades ago. A cool breeze touched his face. That wasn't right. All the windows were closed. Malcolm froze. The living room ahead was dark, but something felt wrong. He reached for the light switch, and his stomach dropped. The room was destroyed. Papers scattered everywhere, photo albums ripped apart, his mother's antique vase shattered on the floor. Someone had methodically gone through every drawer and cabinet, leaving chaos in their wake. On the coffee table, weighted down by a broken picture frame, lay a note written in thick black marker. Leave or else. Malcolm pulled out his phone, taking photos of the damage. His FBI training kicked in as he surveyed the scene, noting entry points and patterns in the destruction. The back window's lock had been jimmied. Professional work, not some random vandal. As he bent to collect the scattered papers, something caught his eye under the couch. A small black device, barely larger than a quarter, with a tiny blinking light. Malcolm's jaw tightened. A listening bug, and a sophisticated one. Someone wanted to hear every word spoken in this room. Glass exploded inward as a brick sailed through the front window. Malcolm dropped to the floor, years of training taking over. Through the broken window, he glimpsed a figure in dark clothing darting across his lawn. "Not today," Malcolm muttered, launching himself toward the door. His feet pounded down the porch steps as he pursued the shadow. The masked figure was fast, but Malcolm's longer stride closed the distance. Just as he was about to grab the intruder's jacket, they vaulted over Mrs. Willis's fence and disappeared into the darkness. Lights flicked on next door. "Malcolm! Malcolm!" Mrs. Willis called out. "I'm calling the police!" "Stay inside, Mrs. Willis!" Malcolm shouted back, scanning the darkness for any movement. Nothing. Police sirens wailed in the distance, but Malcolm felt no relief. Within minutes, Officers Peterson and Martinez pulled up, taking their time getting out of their cruiser. "Well, well," Peterson drawled, shining his flashlight deliberately in Malcolm's eyes. "Having some trouble settling in, Director?" Malcolm described the break-in, the bug, and the masked figure. Martinez made a show of taking notes, but his smirk said it all. Nothing would come of this. "Probably just kids," Peterson said, not even bothering to look at the damage. "You know how they get. Maybe they're not used to new neighbors." A car door slammed in the driveway. Councilwoman Anita Rhodes strode toward them, her face tight with worry. Malcolm remembered her from high school. She'd always been a fighter for justice, even then. "Officers," she said sharply, "I trust you're conducting a thorough investigation?" "Just wrapping up, ma'am," Martinez replied, already heading back to his cruiser. "Nothing to see here." Once the police left, Anita grabbed Malcolm's arm. "Inside. Now." Her voice was urgent, eyes scanning the street. In the ransacked living room, Anita pulled a folded paper from her jacket. "This isn't random, Malcolm. Look." She spread the paper on the table, a typed list of names. His was at the top, marked with a red X. "Where did you get this?" Malcolm asked, studying the document. "I have sources in City Hall," Anita whispered. "Everyone on this list. They're people who've challenged the power structure here. Some disappeared, some had accidents, others just gave up and left town." She gripped his arm. "Malcolm, these people play for keeps. They've had decades to perfect their system." "The arrest this morning," Malcolm said slowly. "It wasn't just overzealous cops, was it?" "They knew exactly who you were," Anita confirmed. "They wanted to send a message, but it backfired. And now they're scared. Please, Malcolm, you need to leave. They'll keep escalating until what? Until another family loses their home? Until another innocent person gets arrested? Or worse?" Malcolm's voice was quiet but firm. "No, Anita, I'm not running." The sky outside was beginning to lighten, the first gray hints of dawn seeping through the broken window. Malcolm sat at his kitchen table, carefully examining the listening device under a desk lamp. Beside him, he'd started a list of names: Chief Dalton, the mayor, prominent business owners, anyone with power to lose. Anita watched him work, her face a mixture of admiration and fear. You know they'll come after your reputation next. They'll dig up anything they can, make up what they can't find. Malcolm kept writing, his pen moving steadily across the paper. Let them try. Sometimes the only way to fight darkness is to drag it into the light. The bug's circuitry gleamed under the lamp, its secrets waiting to be uncovered. Malcolm reached for his coffee, his hands steady despite the long night. The warning note lay crumpled nearby, its threat now a promise, not of his departure, but of his determination to stay and fight. The morning sun cast long shadows through the Venetian blinds in Councilwoman Anita Rhodes's office. Malcolm sat in a worn leather chair, his brown trench coat draped over the back, watching as Anita pulled file after file from a locked cabinet behind her desk. I've been collecting these for years, she said, dropping a thick stack of manila folders onto her desk. Every time someone came to me with a complaint, I made copies. The originals have a funny way of disappearing from official records. Malcolm leaned forward, opening the first folder. Inside were dozens of handwritten complaints against the police department. Excessive force, illegal searches, harassment. Many were marked with red stamps. Dismissed or no action required. Look at this one, Anita said, pulling out a particular report. Mrs. Jackson, 72 years old, thrown to the ground during a so-called welfare check. When she tried to file a complaint, they threatened to arrest her grandson on drug charges. Malcolm's jaw tightened as he read. The responding officers, Rickman and Hardy? The same ones who arrested you, Anita confirmed. They're new to the force, but they learned the system quick. Young, aggressive, willing to do whatever the chief tells them. She opened another drawer and pulled out a map of Cypress Bayou. Red dots marked dozens of properties throughout the historically black neighborhoods. Each dot represents a family who lost their home in the last 5 years. Notice anything? Malcolm studied the pattern. They're all within 3 blocks of the proposed highway expansion. Exactly. Anita spread out more documents: foreclosure notices, eviction orders, property liens. The mayor's office claims it's just coincidence, but look at the signatures. Malcolm pulled out his reading glasses, examining the papers closely. These notary stamps? They're identical. Not similar, identical. Someone's using a photocopied stamp. And the dates, Anita pointed out. Notice how some of the processing dates are on Sundays? When government offices are closed? A knock at the door made them both look up. A young black man in his late 20s stood in the doorway, laptop bag slung over his shoulder, press badge hanging from his neck. Corey Johnson, he introduced himself, stepping forward to shake Malcolm's hand. I write for the Cypress Bayou Chronicle. What's left of it, anyway. Corey's been working on this story for months, Anita explained. He's the only reporter in town willing to touch it. More like the only one they haven't bought off yet, Corey said, pulling out his laptop. But they're trying. Last week, my editor killed a story about suspicious property transfers. Said it wasn't newsworthy. Malcolm watched as Corey pulled up a spreadsheet. What have you found? Pattern goes back decades, Corey explained, turning the screen so they could see. Every time there's a major development project, the same thing happens. Black families start getting hit with code violations, property tax reassessments, criminal charges. Then come the foreclosures. By the time the project breaks ground, the neighborhood's been cleared out. And the properties always end up in the hands of the same development companies, Anita added. Shell corporations that trace back to city council members, the police chief's brother-in-law, the mayor's golf buddies. Malcolm spread the documents across the desk, creating a timeline. Show me everything you have on the most recent cases. For the next hour, they pieced together the puzzle. Corey's investigative notes revealed a complex web of connections. Judges who rubber-stamped eviction orders, bank officers who expedited foreclosures, police who carried out lightning-fast evictions before families could appeal. "Here's what I don't understand," Corey said, pointing to a recent foreclosure notice. The Williams family. They had their house paid off. No mortgage, no liens. How did the bank foreclose on a free and clear property? Malcolm examined the document closely. Look at the signature date, March 15th, 2023. But Mrs. Williams died in February. Exactly, Corey said, his eyes lighting up. Someone forged her signature after she passed. Her children tried to fight it, but the judge wouldn't even look at the death certificate. Anita checked her watch. The county clerk's office opens at 1. If we hurry, we can pull the original property records before anyone realizes what we're doing. Malcolm gathered the files carefully, organizing them in his briefcase. Corey, can you access property tax records? See who's paying taxes on these properties now? Already on it, Corey nodded, typing rapidly. Most of them are listed under numbered LLCs, but I've got a contact in the tax assessor's office who might help us trace the ownership. They stood, preparing to leave. Anita locked the file cabinet and drew the blinds. We need to be careful. The clerk's office has security cameras. They'll know we were there. Let them see, Malcolm said, putting on his trench coat. Sometimes the best way to catch a snake is to make it think you don't know where it's hiding. As they walked toward the door, Corey shouldered his laptop bag. You know they'll try to stop us, right? These people, they've got everything to lose. And we've got everything to gain, Anita replied, her voice firm. Our community, our history, our homes. Malcolm checked his watch. 12:45 p.m. The county clerk's office closes at 4. That gives us 3 hours to find what we need. The county clerk's office was housed in a squat brick building that hadn't seen updates since the 1970s. Inside, fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as Malcolm, Anita, and Corey approached the front desk. The clerk, Mrs. Pearson, a thin woman with graying hair, looked up and immediately tensed. "Can I help you?" she asked, her fingers fidgeting with a pen. Malcolm stepped forward, keeping his voice gentle but firm. "We need to review some property records from the past 5 years. Public documents." Mrs. Pearson's eyes darted to the phone on her desk. I'll need to check with my supervisor." "That won't be necessary," Anita said, placing her city council ID on the counter. "As you know, these are public records. We have the right to view them." The clerk hesitated, then nodded quickly. "The archive room is through that door. Sign the visitor log, please." They followed her down a narrow hallway lined with filing cabinets. The archive room smelled of old paper and dust. Metal shelves stretched from floor to ceiling, packed with property records, deeds, and tax documents. "Everything's organized by year and street," Mrs. Pearson explained, wringing her hands. "I'll be at my desk if you need anything." As soon as she left, Corey pulled out his laptop. "I'll start with the most recent cases. The Williams property should be in the 2023 files." Malcolm noticed the security camera in the corner, its red light blinking steadily. "Work fast. We don't have much time before word gets out. We're here." They split up, each taking different sections. Anita focused on tax records, Malcolm on property deeds, and Corey on foreclosure documents. The only sounds were shuffling papers and the occasional whispered discovery. "Got something," Anita said after 20 minutes. "Look at these tax assessments. Properties in black neighborhoods suddenly jumping in value by 300% right before foreclosure proceedings begin." Malcolm examined the papers. Same assessor's signature on all of them. Judge Patterson's wife. "Here's more," Corey added, spreading documents on a dusty table. "Deed transfers with impossible dates. This one shows Mrs. Williams signing over her property 3 weeks after her funeral. Malcolm's trained eye caught movement through the glass door. 2 men in civilian clothes, Officers Rickman and Hardy, were talking to Mrs. Pearson at her desk. She pointed toward the archive room, her face pale. "We've got company," Malcolm murmured. "Anita, start taking photos of everything." "Corey, back up what you can." Anita pulled out her phone, quickly photographing document after document. Corey inserted a USB drive, his fingers flying over the keyboard as he saved digital copies of his findings. The evidence was damning. Property deeds with forged signatures, backdated notices, tax liens filed without proper documentation, all connected through a web of shell companies leading back to town officials. "These companies," Malcolm said, pointing to a series of LLCs, "all registered to the same address, Chief Dalton's brother-in-law's law office. And look who notarized everything," Anita added. "The mayor's secretary. Same stamp we found earlier." The officers were closer now, pretending to read bulletin board notices in the hallway. Malcolm could feel their eyes through the glass. "Time to go," he said quietly. "Pack up naturally. Don't rush." They gathered their notes carefully, trying not to draw attention. Corey saved his final files and pocketed the USB drive. Anita's phone was full of photos, safely uploaded to her cloud storage. As they stepped into the hallway, Officer Hardy suddenly appeared, bumping hard into Corey. "Oh, sorry there," he said with a smirk, his hand brushing Corey's jacket pocket. Corey stumbled, catching himself against the wall. When he straightened up, his face went tight. The USB drive was gone. "No problem, officer," Malcolm said smoothly, placing himself between Corey and Hardy. "We were just leaving." Officer Rickman blocked their path, arms crossed. "Find anything interesting in there?" "Just public records," Anita replied, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Available to any citizen who asks." They pushed past the officers, feeling hostile eyes on their backs. Mrs. Pearson stared at her computer screen, refusing to look up as they passed. Outside, the afternoon sun was blinding after the dim archive room. They walked quickly to their cars, parked in different sections of the lot. "They got the drive," Corey said, his voice tight with anger. "All the scanned documents, my notes, everything." "Not everything," Anita assured him, patting her phone. "I got most of it backed up." "And you said you have files at home?" "Yeah, on my personal computer. Not as complete, but enough to start with." Malcolm watched the officers emerge from the building, Hardy tossing the stolen USB drive in his hand with a satisfied grin. "Let's meet at my house in an hour," Malcolm said quietly. "We need to plan our next move carefully." They separated, each heading to their own vehicle. Malcolm waited until Anita and Corey had driven away before starting his car. In his rearview mirror, he could see the officers watching, probably thinking they'd won this round. They didn't know that this was just the beginning. Corey's apartment was a small one-bedroom unit above a laundromat, the walls vibrating with the constant hum of dryers below. Malcolm paced the cramped living room, his brown trench coat swishing as he turned. The evening light filtering through dusty blinds cast long shadows across scattered papers and open laptops. "Most of my research is still here," Corey said, gesturing to his computer. "They got the fresh evidence, but I've been tracking these cases for months." Anita sat on a worn couch, scrolling through the photos on her phone. "The property records we found today connect at least 12 different foreclosures to the same group of shell companies." Malcolm stopped pacing, studying a wall where Corey had pinned newspaper clippings and sticky notes in a complex web. "We need to move fast. They know we're onto them now." The room smelled of cold coffee and takeout Chinese. Empty containers littered Corey's desk, evidence of long nights spent digging through records. A police scanner crackled quietly in the corner, a habit Corey had picked up after one too many close calls with local law enforcement. "Look at this pattern," Anita said, spreading photos across Corey's coffee table. Every property they targeted was owned free and clear, most passed down through generations. Malcolm leaned in to examine the documents when his phone buzzed. Mrs. Willis's name flashed on the screen. "Edna?" he answered, stepping away from the others. Her voice was hushed, urgent. "Malcolm, baby, listen careful now. You got a snake in your garden. Not everyone showing you friendship means you well." "What do you mean?" Malcolm's spine stiffened. "Who?" "Can't say more. Just watch your back and mind who you trust." The line went dead. Malcolm stared at his phone, mind racing through possibilities. Before he could share Mrs. Willis's warning, heavy footsteps thundered up the external stairs. "Police! Open up!" Corey jumped to his feet, face draining of color. "Back door!" The front door burst open, wood splintering around the lock. Officers flooded in, weapons drawn. Malcolm recognized Rickman and Hardy among them, looking far too pleased. "Everyone on the ground!" Hardy shouted, waving his gun. "Now!" Malcolm raised his hands slowly, years of FBI training keeping him calm. "What's the meaning of this?" Rickman thrust a paper at him. "Search warrant. Mr. Johnson here is suspected of stealing confidential county documents." "That's ridiculous," Anita protested, as an officer roughly pushed her to her knees. "Those were public records." The officers began ransacking the apartment. They overturned furniture, dumped drawers, and yanked books from shelves. One officer accidentally knocked Corey's laptop to the floor, screen cracking. "Hey!" Corey started forward, but was slammed against the wall, hands wrenched behind his back. "Resisting arrest," Hardy smirked, snapping handcuffs too tight. "That's gonna cost you extra." Malcolm watched helplessly as they systematically destroyed Corey's research. Years of investigative work scattered and trampled under muddy boots. His jaw clenched as he spotted Hardy pocketing a thumb drive with a wink. Anita's phone chimed with a text. Her face went ash-white as she looked at the screen. Malcolm caught a glimpse of a photo, her teenage son's face clearly visible in what appeared to be surveillance footage from a convenience store robbery. Another text followed. "Back off, or your son goes down for good." She met Malcolm's eyes, terror and rage warring in her expression. He gave a subtle shake of his head. "Don't react. Not now." "Corey Johnson," Rickman announced with theatrical flair, "you're under arrest for theft of county property, interference with an investigation, and resisting arrest." They marched Corey down the stairs, not bothering to be gentle. His head hit the door frame with a thud that made Malcolm's fists clench. From the window, Malcolm watched the scene unfold on the street below. Neighbors gathered to witness Corey being pushed into a squad car, his journalist's notepad falling from his pocket. An officer crushed it under his boot, grinding it into the pavement. Anita's phone buzzed again. She stared at it, hands shaking, before showing Malcolm the screen. More photos of her son, these ones clearly doctored to place him at different crime scenes. The message was clear. They could destroy him anytime they wanted. The police cars pulled away, sirens silent, leaving behind a destroyed apartment and shattered evidence. In the heavy quiet, Malcolm could hear the dryers still humming below, an oddly normal sound in the aftermath of violence. He surveyed the wreckage of Corey's home. Papers everywhere, furniture broken, computers smashed. Years of careful investigation scattered like confetti across the floor. But his eyes caught something the officers had missed. A loose floorboard under the overturned desk, slightly ajar. Before he could move toward it, Anita's phone chimed one final time. She didn't need to read it aloud. The message was written on her face. They were all being watched, and the price of continuing would be paid by those they loved most. The streetlights cast long shadows as Malcolm walked the empty streets of Cypress Bayou, his brown trench coat billowing in the cool night breeze. His footsteps echoed off old brick buildings, past shuttered storefronts with fading paint. The town felt different at night, more honest about its secrets. He pulled out his phone, scrolling through contacts until he found Agent Sarah Chen's number. She'd been his right hand at the bureau for 15 years, someone he trusted with his life. The phone rang 3 times. "Malcolm?" Chen's voice was alert, despite the late hour. "Everything okay?" "Sarah, I need your help." He kept walking, eyes scanning the darkness. "Things are worse than we thought down here. I'm looking at systematic corruption. Police, city officials, property theft. They just arrested a journalist who was helping me investigate." "Jesus." Papers rustled on her end. "Give me details." Malcolm outlined everything. The false arrest, the hidden bugs, the attacks, the blackmail. "They're organized, Sarah. This goes deep. I need you to quietly put together a task force. But keep it off official channels for now. We don't know how far this reaches. Consider it done." More typing. "I'll have a team ready within 48 hours. Just stay alive until then." "Will do. And Sarah, watch your back. These people have connections." He ended the call, turning onto his street. The houses were dark except for a few porch lights, their yellow glow creating islands in the blackness. Something felt wrong. The air seemed to crackle with tension. Headlights suddenly blazed behind him, engine roaring. Malcolm spun around to see a pickup truck accelerating straight at him. He dove to the side, rolling across Mrs. Willis's front lawn as the truck mounted the curb where he'd been standing. The vehicle skidded to a stop, tires tearing up grass. 3 men in ski masks jumped out, gripping baseball bats and metal pipes. They moved with purpose, spreading out to surround him. Malcolm rose slowly, hands raised. "You really don't want to do this." The largest attacker swung his bat. Malcolm stepped inside the arc, grabbing the man's wrist and twisting sharply. Bone snapped. The bat clattered to the ground along with a howl of pain. The second man rushed in with a pipe. Malcolm blocked with his forearm, wincing at the impact. He countered with a precise strike to the throat, following with a sweep that sent the attacker sprawling into the mud. The third man hesitated, then charged. Malcolm used the attacker's momentum against him, redirecting him into the truck's hood with a sickening thud. A wallet fell from the man's jacket pocket. "FBI, drop your weapons!" Malcolm's voice cut through the night, authority ringing in every syllable. The first man clutched his broken arm, scrambling backward. The second still gasped for air in the mud. But the third managed to stagger to his feet and sprint for the driver's side. The truck roared to life, tires spinning in the torn-up grass. The other 2 attackers stumbled after it, leaving their fallen weapons behind. Malcolm let them go, focusing instead on the wallet lying in the mud. His ribs screamed as he bent to retrieve it. Blood trickled from a cut above his eye where the pipe had grazed him. The wallet was expensive leather, barely scuffed from its fall. Inside, he found a driver's license for Deputy Mayor Thomas Green. Pain shot through his leg as he limped toward his house. Every breath hurt. His trench coat was torn and muddy, spattered with blood, both his and theirs. The porch steps felt like climbing a mountain. Inside, Malcolm locked the door and drew the curtains. He made his way to the bathroom, wincing at his reflection in the mirror. The cut wasn't deep, but would need cleaning. His knuckles were raw, and dark bruises were already forming along his ribs. He opened the medicine cabinet, finding an old first aid kit. As he dabbed antiseptic on his wounds, his hands remained steady despite the adrenaline still coursing through his system. The FBI training had kicked in automatically during the fight, muscle memory taking over when it mattered most. Malcolm pulled off his ruined trench coat, draping it over the shower rod. The wallet sat heavy in his pants pocket, a solid lead at last. Deputy Mayor Green would have some explaining to do. In the kitchen, he filled a bag with ice for his ribs. The house creaked and settled around him, familiar sounds from his childhood now seeming ominous. He sank into a kitchen chair, body aching, and studied the ID in the wallet. Green's smiling photo stared back at him, oblivious to how this small rectangle of plastic would soon upend his world. Outside, a dog barked in the distance. Car tires crunched on gravel. Malcolm sat in the dark, holding his ice pack, waiting for his breathing to slow. The wallet represented something bigger than just one corrupt official. It was proof that the rot went all the way to the top. The sun crept over Cypress Bayou's horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange. Malcolm sat in a corner booth at May's Diner, his coffee untouched. Every movement sent jolts of pain through his ribs. His face bore the evidence of last night's fight. A butterfly bandage above his eyebrow, dark bruises blooming along his jaw. The bell above the door chimed. Anita Rhodes entered, looking like she hadn't slept. Her usually pristine blazer was wrinkled, and dark circles shadowed her eyes. She slid into the booth across from Malcolm, her hands trembling slightly as she reached for the coffee pot on the table. "You look like hell," she said quietly, pouring herself a cup. "You should see the other guys." Malcolm pulled out Deputy Mayor Green's wallet and placed it between them. "One of them left us a present." Anita's eyes widened as she examined the ID. "Thomas Green? He's been pushing those urban renewal projects, the ones forcing black families out of their homes." She leaned back, running a hand through her hair. "Any word on Corey?" Malcolm shook his head. "They're holding him without bail, claiming he stole confidential documents." He winced as he shifted in his seat. "Your son?" "Nothing." Her voice cracked. "The photos they sent, they staged it perfectly. Made it look like he was breaking into the high school." She gripped her coffee cup tighter. "He's just 17, Malcolm. He's never been in trouble a day in his life." The morning waitress approached their booth, but Malcolm waved her away with a polite smile. He pulled out his phone, showing Anita a series of text messages. "I contacted Carmen Rodriguez at the Washington Post. She's ready to run the story. Police brutality, corruption, systematic displacement of minority homeowners. All of it. That's not enough." Anita reached into her bag, pulling out a thick manila envelope. "So I brought insurance." Her hands shook as she slid it across the table. Internal memos, backdated permits, emails between Green and developers. "They'll end my career for this, but I don't care anymore. Not after what they did to my boy." Malcolm carefully tucked the envelope into his jacket. "I've got backup coming too. Called in a favor from the Bureau. A task force is assembling quietly. They'll be here soon." The diner's door chimed again. Both Malcolm and Anita tensed, but it was just an elderly couple shuffling to their usual table. The smell of bacon and coffee filled the air, a strange contrast to the weight of their conversation. "Something's happening," Malcolm said, lowering his voice. "Since last night, I've received dozens of messages. People coming forward, sharing stories, evidence, the dam's breaking." He showed her his phone again. Photos of forged documents, videos of police harassment, voice recordings of threats made to homeowners. Each message represented someone finding the courage to speak up. "This one's from a clerk at City Hall," he said, scrolling through texts. "Says she has proof of Green doctoring property records going back 5 years. This one's from a former officer who witnessed the chief taking bribes. And here, a developer with recordings of planning meetings that were really shakedowns." Anita's hands had stopped shaking. A fierce light sparked in her eyes. "They thought they could bury this forever. That we'd just take it like we always have. Not this time." Malcolm sipped his cold coffee. "Rodriguez is running the story tomorrow. National coverage. Once it breaks, State and federal investigations will follow. They won't be able to hide anymore. The morning sun now streamed through the diner's windows, making the bruises on Malcolm's face more visible. A few patrons stared, then quickly looked away when he met their eyes. "We need to be careful," Anita whispered. "These people, they're not just going to roll over. They'll fight back harder than ever." "Let them." Malcolm's voice was steel. "We've got truth on our side, and numbers. Every person who comes forward makes us stronger." His phone buzzed. Another message. Then another. The trickle of witnesses was becoming a flood. People tired of living in fear, inspired by those willing to stand up first. The lunch crowd started filtering into the diner. Malcolm and Anita kept their voices low, reviewing documents, coordinating plans, preparing for what would come next. The weight of decades of injustice hung in the air between them. At sunset, as Malcolm was reviewing another batch of whistleblower evidence, his phone lit up with a new message. Anonymous. The words made his heart race. "Town Hall. Tomorrow. Show what you've got. The world will be watching." He lay in bed that night, staring at the water stains on his ceiling. His body ached from the fight, but his mind was clear. Everything they'd gathered, the wallet, Anita's documents, the whistleblower evidence, it was all building to this moment. Tomorrow would change everything. The evening sun cast long shadows through the windows of Cypress Bayou's town hall. Every wooden bench creaked under the weight of bodies packed shoulder to shoulder. Camera crews lined the back wall, their red lights blinking like watchful eyes. The air conditioning struggled against the heat of too many people in too small a space. Malcolm adjusted his brown trench coat, hiding a wince as his bruised ribs protested. Beside him, Anita clutched a thick folder to her chest, her face set with determination. Corey Johnson, released just hours ago, showed the marks of his jail stay, stubble on his chin and dark circles under his eyes. But his journalist's notebook was already out, pen ready. "Ready?" Malcolm asked them quietly. Anita nodded. "Born ready." They entered through the side door, but heads turned anyway. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Mrs. Willis, seated in the front row, gave them a slight nod. Behind her, Thomas Green, his arm in a cast, shifted uncomfortably. Mayor Wallace Sutter stood at the podium, his usual smooth charm strained around the edges. "Now, folks, let's maintain order." This emergency session was called to address certain unfounded allegations. Point of order. Malcolm's voice carried clearly through the packed room. He stood, straightening his tie. "I believe public comment is first on the agenda, and I have something to say." The mayor's face tightened. "Mr. Everett, this isn't—" "Dr. Everett," Corey called out, loud enough for the cameras to catch. "Or should we say, Director Everett of the Federal Bureau of Investigation." The room erupted in murmurs. Camera flashes popped like lightning. Malcolm walked steadily to the center aisle, each step measured and deliberate. "Mr. Mayor," he said, "I've prepared a presentation about property rights, police conduct, and the systematic displacement of black families in Cypress Bayou." He held up a USB drive. "I believe the projector is ready." Before Sutter could object, Anita was already at the computer, plugging in the drive. The first image filled the screen, a map of their town, with dozens of properties highlighted in red. "These are the homes," Malcolm said, his voice carrying to every corner, "that were seized through fraudulent means over the past 5 years. Forged signatures, backdated notices, illegal evictions." He clicked to the next slide, a series of emails between the mayor's office and local developers. "Here's how it worked." Chief Dalton, red-faced, stood up. "This is slander. I won't allow—" "You don't have a choice." Malcolm produced a court order. "Federal investigation, Chief. Your jurisdiction ended the moment you tried to arrest me on my own property." The next slides showed police reports, dozens of them, documenting harassment of black homeowners. Then came the audio recordings, Green's voice, clear as day, discussing which families to target next. The mayor's voice, laughing about urban renewal. People in the crowd gasped. Some cried out in recognition of their own stories. Mrs. Willis stood up, her voice shaking but strong. They did this to my sister's family. Forced them out after 50 years. Others joined in, a chorus of long-suppressed truth breaking free. Malcolm held up his hand for quiet. But the most damning evidence came from your own people. He nodded to the back, where 3 town clerks stood. These brave individuals documented everything. Every forged document. Every illegal order. Every bribe. The mayor lunged for the microphone. This meeting is adjourned. Officers, remove these people. Several police officers moved forward, but stopped short. The back doors swung open. Men and women in FBI windbreakers filed in, positioning themselves around the room. Malcolm's FBI badge gleamed as he held it up. I don't think so, Mr. Mayor. You see, this isn't just a town hall meeting. This is the beginning of a federal investigation into corruption, civil rights violations, and criminal conspiracy. Anita stepped forward, her voice strong. And a class action lawsuit. Every family you stole from is named. Every dollar will be repaid. Corey held up his phone. Live streaming to every major news network. No one can bury this story now. The crowd surged to their feet. Applause thundered through the room. Chief Dalton's face had gone from red to ashen. The mayor gripped the podium, knuckles white. Malcolm clicked to the final slide. A simple list of names. These are the families who lost their homes. Their stories will be heard. Their property will be restored. His eyes met the chief's, then the mayor's. And those responsible will face justice. More people stood, sharing their stories. Reporters scribbled frantically. Cameras whirred. The truth, so long suppressed, filled every corner of the room. Malcolm gathered his documents, nodding to Anita and Corey. Together, they walked toward the exit, the crowd parting before them. Their footsteps echoed on the wooden floor, accompanied by growing applause. Chief Dalton watched them pass, his hand clenched into a fist. But he couldn't stop what was happening. Not anymore. The cameras kept rolling, recording every moment of his defeat. The victory at Town Hall felt distant now as Malcolm gripped his steering wheel, driving through the dark streets of Cypress Bayou. His brown trench coat was folded in the passenger seat, and sweat dampened his collar despite the cool night air. Streetlights cast yellow pools on the empty roads, and his mind raced with the day's events. His phone buzzed, a text from Anita. Be careful, they're desperate now. The words had barely registered when his rearview mirror filled with blinding headlights. A black SUV appeared from nowhere, engine roaring. Malcolm pressed the accelerator, but the SUV slammed into his rear bumper. The impact jolted him forward, his seatbelt cutting into his chest. Not here, he muttered, trying to maintain control of his car. Not after everything! The SUV rammed him again, harder. His car fishtailed, tires screaming on the asphalt. Malcolm fought the wheel, using every bit of his FBI defensive driving training. The SUV pulled alongside, its tinted windows rolling down. Malcolm caught a glimpse of ski masks in the darkness. Then came the metallic glint of gun barrels. The first shots shattered his driver's side window. Glass sprayed across his face as he ducked, yanking the wheel hard right. More bullets punched through metal and upholstery. The acrid smell of gunpowder filled the air. His car slammed into a curb, the impact deploying airbags in a white explosion. Through the powder and chaos, Malcolm saw the SUV screech to a stop, blocking the road ahead. 4 men jumped out, weapons raised. Malcolm didn't hesitate. He kicked his door open and rolled out, staying low. More shots cracked through the night. One bullet clipped his left arm, sending hot pain through his shoulder. He scrambled behind a parked car, blood already soaking his white shirt sleeve. "Get him!" a voice shouted. "The boss wants proof." Malcolm sprinted between houses, his dress shoes slipping on wet grass. He vaulted a fence, landing hard in someone's backyard. Dogs started barking. Lights flicked on in windows. He could hear his pursuers crashing through bushes behind him. Another fence, another yard. His arm throbbed, leaving a trail of blood droplets. Malcolm's breath came in ragged gasps as he pushed through the pain. He'd survived worse in the field, but he was older now, and these weren't trained operatives he could outmaneuver. These were desperate men with nothing left to lose. A bullet splintered the fence beside his head. Malcolm dove behind a children's play set, his heart pounding. He needed to think, needed to. His foot caught a garden hose. He stumbled, rolling across damp earth. When he tried to push himself up, his injured arm gave out. Blood loss was making him dizzy. Flashlight beams swept the darkness. They were getting closer. Malcolm spotted a shed tucked against the back of the nearest house. Half crawling, he made it to the door. It was locked, but the wood was old. One solid kick near the handle, and it splintered open. Inside, he pressed himself between a lawnmower and stacked flower pots. His fingers trembled as he pulled out his phone, leaving bloody smears on the screen. The FBI had a special emergency code, 4 numbers that would trigger an immediate response. If he could just... Footsteps crunched on gravel outside. Malcolm held his breath, typing the numbers with agonizing slowness to avoid any sound. "Check the shed," a voice growled. Malcolm hit send just as a flashlight beam cut through the gaps in the wooden walls. His vision swam. The blood loss was getting worse. He tried to apply pressure to the wound, but his fingers felt numb and clumsy. A dog started barking frantically next door. Then another joined in. "Cops!" someone hissed. "They're coming from both directions!" The footsteps retreated. Car doors slammed in the distance. An engine roared to life and faded away. Malcolm sagged against the wall, his consciousness flickering. Sirens wailed, getting closer. Red and blue lights painted the shed's interior in alternating flashes. He could hear car doors opening, voices shouting, but it all seemed very far away now. The shed tilted and spun around him. His phone buzzed weakly. Messages from Anita, from Corey, from his FBI contact. Breaking news alerts about his criminal past, about his fraudulent claims at the town hall. The mayor's office was already spinning their story. Malcolm's head dropped to his chest. The blood had soaked through his shirt, dripping onto the shed's dirt floor. The sirens seemed to be coming from underwater now. His eyelids felt impossibly heavy. "Still here," he whispered to himself, fighting to stay awake. "Still." But the darkness was winning. The last thing he saw was the shed door casting long shadows in the police lights. And then everything faded to black. Malcolm's eyes fluttered open to harsh fluorescent lights and the steady beep of medical monitors. His left arm throbbed beneath thick bandages and cold metal pressed against his right wrist, handcuffs securing him to the hospital bed rail. 2 stern-faced FBI agents stood guard at his door, their backs to him. Through the window, he could see a crowd of reporters and camera crews camped in the parking lot below. Their equipment vans created a maze of satellite dishes and cables. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across their expectant faces as they waited for news. "Welcome back," a familiar voice said softly. Malcolm turned to find Anita Rhodes sitting beside his bed. Dark circles ringed her eyes, but she managed a tired smile. She wore the same clothes from the town hall meeting, now wrinkled from sleepless nights. "How long?" Malcolm's voice was rough from disuse. "2 days," Anita replied, pouring him a cup of water. "You lost a lot of blood. The doctors weren't sure." She trailed off, helping him take a sip through a straw. The water felt like heaven on his parched throat. "The local police tried to arrest you while you were unconscious," she continued, her voice tight with anger. "But the FBI stepped in. They've been guarding you around the clock." Malcolm nodded toward the handcuffs. "Then why these?" "Mayor Sutter's last attempt to save himself. He's claiming you're a danger to the community." Anita's expression hardened. "They're trying to destroy your credibility. The smear campaign started right after the shooting. They're calling you a fraud, a criminal, anything to discredit what you revealed at Town Hall." Malcolm closed his eyes, processing this. "Corey? He's okay." They ransacked his apartment again, but he wasn't there. He's been staying with friends, still writing. The story's gone national. Every major network is covering it. She reached into her purse and glanced at the FBI agents who were still focused on the hallway. Carefully, she slipped something small and black beneath Malcolm's pillow. "While you were out, we kept gathering evidence," she whispered. "This recorder has everything. Confession from a clerk who forged documents, phone calls between the mayor and developers, police radio chatter about targeting specific homes, plus testimony from 3 officers who are ready to turn on Chief Dalton." Malcolm felt the shape of the recorder against his hand. "They'll try to stop us from releasing it. They already are. The mayor's office got a court order blocking any unverified allegations from being published." Anita leaned closer. "But they can't stop a live broadcast, and they can't touch you now, not with the whole country watching." As if to emphasize her point, a fresh wave of camera flashes erupted outside. More reporters were arriving, drawn by rumors that the FBI director himself was about to break his silence. Malcolm pressed the call button. When a nurse appeared, he said clearly, "I'd like to hold a press conference, right here, right now." The next hour was a blur of activity. Despite protests from his doctors, Malcolm insisted on sitting up in bed. He kept his hospital gown, but draped his signature brown trench coat over his shoulders. Damaged and blood-stained, it was a powerful visual reminder of the attempt on his life. News cameras crowded into his room. Microphones bristled around his bed like metallic flowers. Local stations patched in live feeds to national networks. Millions would be watching. Malcolm's fingers found the recorder beneath his pillow. His arm ached. His head felt light from pain medication, but his voice was steady as he began. 2 days ago, I was shot for exposing corruption in Cypress Bayou. Today, I'll finish what I started." He pressed play. The room fell silent as voices filled the air. The mayor discussing kickbacks, Chief Dalton ordering illegal surveillance, officers laughing about forged eviction notices. Malcolm played it all. As he spoke, FBI agents were already moving. Teams with search warrants descended on City Hall and the police station. Computers were seized. Files were confiscated. Decades of corruption were dragged into the light. On his hospital room TV, Malcolm watched the coverage unfold in real time. Reporters breathlessly narrated as federal agents led a parade of handcuffed officials to waiting vehicles. Chief Dalton came first, his face purple with rage as cameras flashed. Then Mayor Sutter, his expensive suit wrinkled. All traces of Southern charm gone. Officer Rickman fought and cursed as agents pushed his head down into a car. Social media exploded. Hashtags trended. More whistleblowers came forward, overwhelming tip lines with new evidence. The conspiracy was unraveling in real time, broadcast to the world. In neighborhoods across Cypress Bayou, people stepped onto their porches, watching history unfold. Cars honked in celebration. Some residents wept openly, decades of fear finally lifting. Others hugged their neighbors, hope replacing resignation in their eyes. From his hospital bed, Malcolm watched it all. The handcuffs still bound him to the rail, but they didn't matter anymore. The truth was free. The late summer sun blazed down on the courthouse steps as Malcolm Everett adjusted his brown trench coat. His arms still ached beneath fresh bandages, but he stood tall among the gathering crowd. Handmade signs bobbed above people's heads. Justice at last, and our homes, our rights, and thank you, Malcolm. Federal agents in dark suits moved purposefully in and out of City Hall across the street. They carried boxes of files and computer equipment, evidence of decades of corruption being cataloged and preserved. The sight brought satisfied murmurs from the assembled townspeople. "Never thought I'd see the day," Mrs. Willis said beside Malcolm, dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief. "Those crooks walking around like they owned us all. Now look at them." Malcolm squeezed her shoulder gently. It was everyone standing together that made this happen, not just me. The crowd parted as Anita Rhodes approached, her head held high. She wore a fresh council pin on her lapel, reinstated just that morning after a unanimous vote from the Emergency Oversight Committee. The shadows under her eyes had finally faded, replaced by quiet triumph. "The first housing restoration orders just came through," she announced, holding up a stack of papers. 23 families getting their deeds back today. More to come. A cheer went up from the crowd. Malcolm spotted familiar faces among them, people who'd lost homes, who'd been intimidated into silence, who'd finally found the courage to speak out. They were crying, hugging, lifting their children onto shoulders to see. Corey Johnson pushed through the crowd, his press badge gleaming new around his neck. A national newspaper logo replaced his local credentials. His coverage of the scandal had earned him a promotion and a prestigious journalism award for investigative reporting. "They're bringing out the former mayor now," Corey called out, checking his phone. Federal marshals just arrived. The crowd surged toward the street as a line of black SUVs pulled up. Former Mayor Sutter emerged from City Hall in handcuffs, his expensive suit replaced by orange prison scrubs. Gone was his trademark Southern charm. He kept his eyes down as agents led him to a waiting vehicle. "Shame on you!" someone shouted. Others took up the cry, years of anger finally finding voice. Malcolm raised his hand, and the crowd fell quiet. "Let the justice system handle him now," he said firmly. "We're better than mockery." His words carried weight. The shouting subsided into determined silence as Sutter was driven away. One by one, other arrested officials followed. The police chief, corrupt officers, clerks who'd forged documents. Each exit marked another piece of the old power structure being dismantled. A group of FBI officials emerged next, led by Malcolm's former deputy director. They carried boxes of new materials, training manuals, oversight procedures, community policing guidelines. The Bureau was implementing a pilot program in Cypress Bayou, creating a model for reforming rural law enforcement across the country. "Director Everett," his deputy called out, "the Attorney General sends his regards. He'd like you back in Washington next week to discuss expanding this initiative nationwide." Malcolm nodded, but his attention was on the families now receiving their restoration papers from Anita. Children danced around their parents' legs as deeds were signed. Elderly couples held each other, crying quietly as they reclaimed homes they'd thought lost forever. Mrs. Willis touched his arm. "You did this, Malcolm. You came home and made things right." "We all did it," he corrected gently. Every person who spoke up, every neighbor who shared evidence, every officer who finally chose truth over loyalty to corruption. This is what community looks like. The afternoon sun was lowering when Anita stepped up to the courthouse podium. The crowd fell silent as she held up an ornate golden key. "This key once represented the power certain people held over our town," she said, her voice carrying across the square. "Today, we reclaim it as a symbol of something else: justice, truth, and the courage to fight for what's right." She turned to Malcolm. Dr. Malcolm Everett didn't just expose corruption. He reminded us who we really are. He showed us that one person willing to stand up can inspire others to do the same. And he proved that justice may be delayed, but it cannot be denied. Malcolm stepped forward as she held out the key. The metal caught the sunlight, gleaming like hope made solid. This key to Cypress Bayou now stands for every door that was wrongly locked, every home that was stolen, every voice that was silenced. Anita continued. In giving it to Malcolm, we mark a new chapter, one where power serves the people, not the other way around. Malcolm accepted the key with his good hand, holding it up so everyone could see. Camera flashes sparked from the media section. Tomorrow, this image would be in newspapers across the country, a symbol of change possible anywhere corruption took root. But for now, Malcolm looked out at the faces before him, not at the cameras or the headlines or the national significance. He saw Mrs. Willis wiping happy tears, Corey scribbling in his notebook, Anita standing proud and vindicated, families holding their children close, finally feeling secure in their own homes. This was what justice looked like. Not just laws and courts and badges, but people standing together, refusing to back down, demanding better. A community healing. The key caught the light again as Malcolm lowered it, and for a moment, it seemed to glow with all their collective hope for the future. The morning sun painted golden streaks across freshly trimmed lawns as Malcolm stepped onto his front porch. The scent of barbecue and sounds of soul music filled the air. His street had transformed. Gone were the suspicious glances and fearful silences. Instead, children raced bikes decorated with streamers while their parents chatted across yard lines that once divided them. Malcolm adjusted his brown trench coat, a habit he couldn't shake even in the warmth. Every house on the block gleamed with new paint, their porches adorned with flowers and welcome signs. The Community Restoration Fund had worked miracles, but the real change was in the people themselves. Willis waved from her porch swing, surrounded by a cluster of young children hanging on her every word. She was telling them stories of the neighborhood's history, not just the painful parts, but the triumphs too. When she spotted Malcolm, she beckoned him over. "Come here, young man," she called, though Malcolm was well into his 50s. "These kids need to hear from you too." Malcolm crossed the street, stopping to shake hands and accept hugs from neighbors along the way. A group of teenagers was setting up speakers and microphones for the day's performances. They wore T-shirts printed with Cypress Bayou Youth Leadership Program, Anita's newest initiative. "Director Everett!" Corey jogged up, professional camera in hand. His press badge now carried the logo of a major network. "Mind if I get a few more interviews for the follow-up piece? People can't get enough of this story." "As long as you get the whole story," Malcolm replied, gesturing to the community around them. "Not just my part in it." Corey nodded, understanding. He'd grown from an ambitious reporter into a thoughtful journalist who knew the power of telling complete truths. He moved through the crowd, capturing moments both big and small. Elderly couples slow dancing to Motown classics. Children learning double Dutch from their grandmothers. Former rivals sharing recipes and laughs. The smell of grilled chicken and collard greens drew people toward long tables set up in the middle of the street. Church ladies competed to see whose potato salad would disappear first. Someone had brought a massive pot of gumbo, and the debate over its authenticity was friendly rather than fierce. Malcolm made his way to Mrs. Willis's porch, where the children immediately bombarded him with questions. Did you really fight off bad guys? Were you scared? Can I be FBI too? The real heroes, Malcolm told them, are the people who never gave up hope. Like Mrs. Willis here, who kept watch over this neighborhood for decades. Like your parents, who stayed strong even when things seemed darkest. Mrs. Willis dabbed her eyes with a handkerchief. We just needed someone to remind us of our strength, she said softly. You did that, Malcolm. You came home when we needed you most. The music shifted to an old gospel tune, and more people gathered to dance in the street. Malcolm spotted Anita directing volunteers, her council pin catching the sunlight. She'd turned her office into a community center, hosting weekly meetings where residents could voice concerns and share ideas. Everyone, Anita called out, tapping a microphone. The crowd quieted, turning toward her. I want to announce something special. Thanks to the settlement funds and generous donations, we're launching the Everett Fellowship for Young Leaders. Every year, 10 local students will receive full college scholarships and mentorship opportunities. Applause erupted. Parents hugged their children tighter, hope shining in their eyes. The possibilities felt endless now. Doors that had been sealed shut were finally opening. Malcolm watched as families who'd lost homes embraced neighbors who'd helped them fight back. The woman from 3 doors down, who'd secretly documented police harassment for years, now sat proudly with her grandchildren. The young couple who'd almost lost their house to forged papers were teaching their daughter to step dance on the sidewalk. Corey filmed it all, his camera capturing the moment when Mrs. Willis pulled Malcolm onto the dance floor. Despite his protests about his injured arm, she insisted he attempt the electric slide. His usually serious face broke into a rare, full smile as he moved with the crowd. See? Mrs. Willis laughed. Justice got rhythm too. The day stretched on, sun high and bright above them. Children played tag between the adults' legs, their shrieks of laughter drowning out even the music sometimes. Older residents shared stories of the neighborhood's past, not just the struggles, but the joy and resilience that had always lived here. Someone had hung a banner between 2 trees. Welcome home, Cypress Bayou. Below it, people continued to dance, eat, and celebrate. The wounds weren't all healed. Some scars would take generations to fade. But here, in this moment, the community had found its voice again. They weren't just surviving anymore. They were thriving. As afternoon settled into early evening, Malcolm watched it all from his porch steps. His brown trench coat was draped over the railing now, a symbol of authority relaxed among family, because that's what they had become. Not just neighbors, but a true family, bound by shared struggle and triumph. The stars began to peek out, one by one, as dusk approached. Malcolm sat back in his chair, feeling the gentle weight of contentment settle over him. Justice, he realized, wasn't just about laws and courts. It was about restoration, about bringing light back to places that had been kept in shadow for too long. I hope you enjoyed that story. Please share it with your friends and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. In the meantime, I have handpicked 2 stories for you that I think you will enjoy. Have a great day.